welcome back, fans, challengers, and judges. Tonight we are live mentoring week 6, Sell Me a Story with Kathy Calarco of Cultivate Kingston. We are excited to dive into this week's brief, but before we do, let's welcome back our wonderful panel of good evening and welcome back to the Shooting Range of Photography Challenge. We are in week 7 of the competition. Challengers, judges, we are almost near the end. This week's challengers were asked to expose themselves in a self-portrait challenge, which was designed with Guest Judge Teri Hofford in mind. Before we dive in, please help us in thanking and welcoming back our amazing panel of judges, who each and every week help us guide our challengers to new heights in their photography. From New Brunswick, we have Maggie of Mag Hood Photography. Coming to us from British Columbia, we have Ronald of Ronald Lee Studios. And last but not least, we have Spencer of Spencer Wynn Photography out of Toronto, Ontario. You three are fantastic photographers and wonderful mentors. Thank you so much for being here. Our guest judge this week, Teri Hofford, comes to us from Winnipeg, Manitoba, and she is a body image educator, photographer, coach, and author. She's been referred to as an emotional dominatrix and tough love Teri for her bold approach to personal responsibility and self-love. Teri's main mission is to challenge and empower humans to shift their focus from constantly changing their bodies to changing their mindset so that they can start changing the world. Thank you so much for being here, Teri. We appreciate your presence. Teri, a quick question for you. The challengers would like to know, how do you take your selfies? Do you use an app, a remote trigger, or are you doing video and using still from the footage? Inquiring minds would like to know.
That's a great question. So I don't do the video thing just because I've tried it and it's not as clear. The only time I did use stills from videos when I do underwater with the GoPro. Just it's a cheaper version of getting a whole housing case for the camera. So when I'm taking my other photos, like in my basement or wherever else, I'll usually use the Canon Connect app if I'm not using a strobe. If I'm using a strobe light, you can't use the Canon Connect app because it's on live view and those don't work together. So yeah, and then in that case, when I'm using a strobe light, then I'll use the intervalometer to do it. And then I just set my focus and then hope to heck that it is in focus. And we'll take like one shot every 5 seconds to a maximum of usually 30 shots per set.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Challengers, I hope that answered your question. So the brief this week was inspired by Teri's work and writings. Challengers were asked to dig deep again, only they would be focusing on themselves this time. To challenge their own biases about themselves instead of someone or something else. It's time to be vulnerable, because being vulnerable and connecting with yourself, you will allow others to be vulnerable and connect with you. Post-processing was discouraged for anything but cropping, balancing whites, and adding creative flourishes. Challengers were also asked not to provide an artist statement, as their images were to show us and not to tell us. We want to acknowledge Bonnie and Virginia, who submitted images this week. Thank you for sticking with the challenges and giving it your all every week. Hope, first slide. This is Bonnie's image. It's called My Alter Ego. Bonnie sees herself as a fun, outgoing, social person, but feels that she comes off as reserved. So she has had some fun with this week's challenge and jumped on the wild side with Teri's help. Teri says, the first thing I saw was her infectious smile. I always love that. I also like the use of the specific stodgy chair that she is standing on. Slide number 2, please, Hope. This image is Virginia's, My Killer Clot, Scary, Messy, Beautiful. Virginia experienced a pulmonary embolism at a very young age. This was a life-changing event for her, and having a makeup artist recreate it on the outside of her body was a cathartic activity that made the experience real in a way that it has never been before. Maggie says, wow, so powerful. Thank you for sharing this raw, vulnerable, beautiful piece of art. Thank you, Bonnie and Virginia, for submitting images. I apologize to Kayla. She had asked me if she could submit, but it was too late on Monday. So I'm hoping that she will post her image in the brief for week 7. You can move on to the next slide. This is a slide of all of the images for this week. Now let's see who this week's sharpshooter is, who needs practice, and who will be leaving the firing line. In no particular order, we're going to get started. Stacy, this week had you reflecting on your role as a boudoir photographer and how you have empowered women to take off their clothes in front of your camera. Yet until this moment, you have not had the experience for yourself. What was the hardest part of this week? And what did you learn about buying yourself lingerie and putting yourself in front of the camera during this challenge?
The hardest part of this week was definitely coming up with my concept. I was gonna like have myself shooting myself, and I decided just to go in my basement, use what I already had set up, and kind of just put the intervals on, put music on, kind of do my thing. And I just kind of learned that it's fun. Like I should do it more. It wasn't really that big of a hassle like I thought it would. I thought photoshopping would have been a problem, but like I kind of like my images.
So do you think that you'll do this more often now?
I'm gonna make an effort for sure. Yeah.
That's awesome. Teri, most photographers suffer from some level of always the photographer, never the photographed. Some of the other judges felt that Stacy's posing with the leaves and the crossed arms was a clever play on the idea of imposter syndrome, while others felt like there was a disconnect between the idea of coming out as an imposter and being exposed. Could you talk a bit about why you believe it's so vitally important for photographers to find themselves on both sides of the camera?
Yeah, absolutely. I think number one, you get to hear all the things you think about when you are putting yourself in front of, in such a vulnerable situation. I think self-portraits give you an intentional space to be able to hear what your clients are also thinking. And if we don't do that, we don't know that that's what they're thinking. And so we might gloss over or just be like, oh no, get over it. It'll be fine. We're going to have so much fun because we see the outside. But when you hear what's actually happening on the inside, like the amount of time, the first time I went, or not the first time I went for a photo shoot, but one time I remember driving, it was a 2-hour drive to Saskatoon to have photos taken. And I just remember the whole way I had already started apologizing for my body, like to myself, on the way to have this photo shoot done. And I stopped and pulled over part way and did a live in my Facebook group for my clients to be like, I totally get it. Like, I haven't even gotten there and I'm already apologizing for, maybe I didn't shave my legs fully or whatever I thought I had to do at the time. And yeah, it just gave me a huge insight into what our clients go through. This is their first time, for the most part, stepping in front of a camera for the first time in like 30 years. And those that exist in marginalized bodies in particular, it is significantly heightened. That anxiety is significantly heightened. And so I think it's the least that a photographer can do is put themselves in the same position as their client.
Thank you. That's a great perspective. Panel judges. This is where I'm going to ask one specific person and then you guys can, jump in if you will. When not appearing on this shooting range, Stacy identifies as a boudoir photographer. She admitted in the Discord chat that she has always promoted the idea of self-love, but rarely finds herself on the other side of the camera. When planning to appear in your own shoots, what would you hope to portray and why? Ronald, do you mind starting us off?
So when appearing in my own shoots,
Yeah.
what do I want to portray?
Yeah.
Typically, if I appear in a setup styled shoot, so meaning like I'm actually trying to shoot myself, I usually come in with a theme. So depending on the theme, then I light and I wardrobe and I make the set like that. But most of my self-portraits are simple. Yeah, I use different themes.
Awesome. Maggie or Spencer?
I can't even remember the last time I did a self-portrait. I did one as an example to students where I took, I think, 7 pictures of myself in the same, with the same scene, but each picture was in a different location, so it looked like there were 7 of me. That was more of an artistic thing, and as Ronald said, it was very, very simple because he didn't want to complicate it too much. I mean, it was enough just to have one person being repeated. But I would think that if I were to do more self-portraits, it would be really trying to capture kind of who I was, you know, through lighting and location, just so that there's some story elements going on.
Thank you, Spencer. Maggie?
For me, it kind of depends. There's different reasons that I would do self-portraits. One is just to try different lighting setups and that kind of thing, and just to play, or maybe I need a new headshot or something like that. But I think the ones that I have done that I've kind of cherished the most is just kind of, they depict different points in my life or different things that I've gone through. So it's a very emotional experience. And a lot of that for me is just sometimes, like in my house, I'll walk by and I'll be like, oh my God, I really love this light. So I'll kind of plan around, you know, a location or a light, the way the light's falling in, or a particular mood, or if something has happened in my life that I want to kind of, you know, have that therapeutic experience of expressing what's going on. And that's kind of what it is for me. It's kind of a therapeutic tool per se.
Thank you. Stacy, do you happen to have any questions this week for the judges, or anything that you'd like to say about your image?
No, not really. I agreed with everyone in their comments.
Thank you, Stacy. Next slide, please, Hope. This is Martha and Liminal. Martha, you mentioned that in the last 35 years, you can probably count on 2 hands the amount of photos of yourself that exist. That you have to wonder if your grandchildren will ever even remember you and what you look like. How did this week change your perspective on the importance of your presence in photographs? And what did you learn about yourself this week?
So this was quite an experience for me, for a couple of reasons. One, I mean, I've never, other than, you know, taking a phone selfie with my little short T-Rex arms, I've never done anything like this. So this was stepping way outside of my box. Number 2, this is actually our bedroom, our bed, which is a very sacred space to me. So this was way outside of what I usually do. Having said that, this isn't something that I would, the situation that I would take a selfie to, you know, have for my grandchildren. But I have decided that there are going to be photos of me. I have a birthday next week, and I have a birthday selfie all planned that will be done properly and properly lit and not with, an iPhone. So I will exist in photos for my grandkids.
Awesome. I love that. Teri, Martha's image played on the anthropological concept of liminality and if space between two states. You made the transition from being a no more pores to a no more post photographer. Can you talk a bit about what that transition was like for you and how it has changed the way that you edit photos?
Yeah, that was a huge change for me because up until that, like to when I decided to stop photoshopping my clients, or at least retouching their skin, was probably 4 years. Like I built my whole business on with the idea of Photoshop. And so I've always been a relatively self-aware person, and also in my business. So when I first started doing boudoir photography, my mission was to get as many people in front of the camera as I possibly could. And I justified the idea of Photoshop with myself, that if the promise of a little skin retouching gets somebody in front of the camera for the first time in 35 years, then it's worth it to just get them to know that they can have photos taken of them. And that was when there was very few people, especially in my city, photographing all bodies. And so I just needed to show that all bodies could have this experience. And so the Photoshop thing was a trade-off that I was willing to make just to show that these bodies could come in. And then, but now it was in 2020, it was like 4 years or 5 years into the business. And there's more boudoir photographers here now, which is fantastic. And they're using Photoshop, which is totally fine, but it allowed me then to say, okay, what's the next thing? What's the next step you want to take in why you're doing this work? And that is to get people, now we know we can exist in photos, but now let's take away the safety net of skin smoothing and body like modification and say, okay, but now you can exist in photos as you are, not how you think you should be. So it's kind of like a chipping away at the things to get to still stay true to why I'm doing the work in the first place, just doing it in a strategic way, if that makes sense. And I always will end up doing projects that force my hand to do the thing that like internally I want to do. So I created a YouTube series called The Series of Flaws, where over the summer I photographed a bunch of different humans with different life experiences and bodies. And I knew for that series, because it was talking about their flaws, that I didn't want to retouch. And so I was like, well, you're already not retouching, so you might as well just keep going with this train. And then I made the announcement. I will not lie, I did see a decrease in bookings as a result of taking away Photoshop, but I know for me that is, in order to lead a movement, I need to be willing to sacrifice something, just like I did at the beginning when it was slower for me to book people, because I wanted to showcase marginalized bodies more than the standard bodies we normally see in the industry, until it got momentum. So I'm willing to do that.
I think that's awesome. Thank you, Teri. Panel judges, whether or not you knew the term liminal before the challenge, we are all familiar with the idea of transitioning from one state to another. What did Martha get right this week expressing a transitional state? And what more could she have done to make this feel more transitional? Maggie, let's start with you.
I love this shot. I liked the idea. I had never really heard that term before. But I love the way that she depicted it with, because we can all relate to that moment when you're sitting in bed and you're waiting to start your day, but it's still like, you're just like, don't want to get out of bed. So I think for me, I loved that, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. So for me, I think there was just, I wanted a little bit more of a feeling with this shot in terms of, you know, are you looking forward to that next step out of bed? Are you looking for, are you kind of fearful of the day ahead? Are you not? Like, I just kind of wanted just a little hint as to what you were thinking. And maybe that was just me. But I mean, overall, I really love the shot, and I appreciate, you know, the vulnerability that must have taken to kind of do this and to share, you know, this place that's so sacred to you. So overall, really great job, Martha.
I just want to jump in really quickly and ask Martha to tell everybody it's not Vaseline on a saucer what causes that lovely, lovely haze. Please share.
Oh, that was bubble wrap from my Amazon package the day before. So,
Awesome.
and I know it's like 80s white vignette, but it had to happen. So sorry about the 80s vignette, but maybe I'll bring back the 80s vignette in a good way.
I loved it. As soon as you told me what
I
it
liked
was,
it.
I thought, oh, please bring it back.
Spencer or Ronald, would you like to chime in?
Sure, I can go. I'm not a big fan of the blurry bits, but I think in this case, she's got this lovely dreamy quality to her expression, and I think it works. That treatment, I think it works with her expression because she is kind of lost in her thought, and you know, who knows where she is. So it does kind of support that really lovely expression that she has. I probably just reduce it a little bit more so it's not like we're looking through a little tiny hole. But you know, let's see a little bit more of the bedhead, just to get us a little bit closer to her.
Thank you, Spencer.
So I really like this image a lot. I did like the blurry effect. The only thing I would say is that there's a little bit too much negative space around her, based on this composition. But in terms of the objective of the photo, like to show her personality, I totally got it. I thought it was really good. Like her sitting in bed, looking out the window, and just dreaming about her next adventure. Like I thought it hit it on the mark, actually.
Thank you, Ronald. Martha, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask the judges tonight, or anything that you'd like to talk about with your image?
So initially my thought had been to have a fairly dark image because this was lit. I had actually pulled the blinds in my room and I lit it with a strobe. So I had wanted to have a very dark, moody, and just sort of see highlights on me. So it just wasn't quite working that way. And I feel like it was probably the choice of modifier at the time. If I wanted to achieve that dark, you know, just have highlights, how would I have better approached it?
One thing, do you mind if I chime in here?
Go ahead, Maggie.
In terms of like lighting, if you're trying to get, oh, sorry, my lamp just went off. If you're trying to get something a little bit darker, one thing you're going to run into here is you have light walls and you have light colored bedding. So everything is going to bounce. So you're going to need a lightify, I would say, in my opinion, something that's really focused in. So what did you use for a modifier here?
Well, you shoot with what you have.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
All I have right now that was functioning was a 24x36 box.
Okay, so softbox is good too. It's better than an umbrella in terms of like being able to kind of narrowly focus it in. And I mean, a grid would help focus it in.
It was
as well.
gridded actually.
Okay, nice.
And I had the lowest ISO, I had the highest shutter speed I could get. I think it was just a matter, like you said, of too much.
When you
light.
did you do a test shot without the light?
I did, and then there was nothing. The sun was on the opposite side of my house when I did this, because I did it in the afternoon. So there was nothing really coming in.
So it was just pitch black?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, and then, see, I would have to, again, it depends on the room, but I think it's all about kind of direction here too. If you pulled the light like as close to the wall there as you could and kind of pointed it out. It's kind of hard to tell, like,
of course,
without seeing the room, but yeah, that would be my suggestion.
Any other judges want to answer Martha's question?
I was going to say, if to the right of the picture there was a wall or a window, if you had pointed the light directly at that to bounce it right back into your face, so then everything else to the side of you would have fallen into the shadow, as opposed to having the light. I'm assuming the light was pointed at you. So just
feathered away from me, but yes.
Yeah, so turning it away so it actually faces the wall or window that's to the left of you, to the right of the frame. I think that would have helped give you a bit more of what you were looking for there.
So Martha, what exactly were you trying to go for again?
So basically a lot of shadow with just highlight, on my face, on my arm, my chest, that really it would have fallen off, at the shoulder, fallen into shadow at the shoulder or something.
I see. I want to comment that I like the photo with the lighting that you have right now. It's great. If it was dark on that side, yeah, well, it might change the feeling of it, but what you have here, I really like.
Thank you.
I like that this is very light and airy, but if you are going for that dramatic look, the one thing, as I think Maggie was saying, if you just did away with the modifier entirely, I've had great luck with just tinfoil, and you're basically making a snoot out of it, and you can shape that snoot. You can have it long, shorter, and just kind of shoot kind of like a raking light across, just almost lighting from the side. So you basically keep the light off the wall, and you are going to pick up those dramatic highlights and have those shadows. And, you can make the end of the tinfoil snoot, really small or a little bit larger, depending on how much area you want. And then you will achieve that really kind of high contrast image.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hope, let's move on to the next slide, please. Johanna, old and gray and A-OK. Johanna, Teri promotes something akin to, this is what I feel like today. It will be different from yesterday and still different tomorrow. If nothing else, this challenge for you was a lesson in being compassionate to yourself. Knowing the saying that goes something like, be kind to others because you never know what someone else is going through. What was your biggest takeaway others should have about doing a self-portrait?
So when we got the assignment, I went and looked at all of Teri's stuff and sort of what her messaging was. And I had originally gone with a completely different concept earlier in the week as soon as we got the assignment. And it was focused around binge eating disorder. I have a diagnosis of binge eating disorder, and felt at that moment that, maybe that was something I should explore. And then later on in the week, I had some, personal issues with my other job, and it was very emotionally exhausting week for me. And when I went and uploaded the photos that I'd taken earlier in the week, I wasn't feeling that they captured what I am. it was the initial concept was, you know, me frantically grabbing things out of the refrigerator, and it was, you know, I'd use some motion blur and stuff, and it was okay. I didn't feel like that was something that was who I am. It was more just something I do, and so I wanted to redo the portrait, and I wanted it to be about something that I was happy with or I'm comfortable with about myself. And going gray, getting wrinkles, is something that, you know, a lot of people try to hide and are ashamed of. And for many years, I colored my hair. You know, I started going gray quite early, and so something kind of switched in me at some point, and I just sort of started embracing the gray, and now it's, you know, it's something I actually really quite love, the way that my grays have come in. And so I just wanted to do something that was that showed my contentment with that, um, and that I was comfortable, instead of going with, you know, how I thought others would perceive me wanting to talk about, or sort of portray my weight in this, and being vulnerable with my weight, which I'm not. It's kind of, you know, it's kind of funny that, you know I accept that I'm a bigger person, and but for me it's my hair that I struggled with for many years to accept going gray. So I think that was just important for me to get across this week. Change it all altogether.
Thank you, Joanna. Teri, you felt like there was a bigger story behind this image. Whether or not it's a selfie or a client, what is it about an image that leads you to the conclusion there's a bigger story here? And as a photographer looking at the back of your camera and reading it in real time, how do you break through those barriers?
Well, that's a difficult question. I think a big part of it has to do with I'm an empath by nature, and can literally feel anything that people have, and I have a good bullshit meter. So when they're like, "No, it's fine," I'm like, "Is it?" Like, "No, you're wearing it like a jacket. I can feel it. Take it off. We're going to talk about it." And so usually one of my favorite tools to use is curiosity with people. Instead of being like, "No, you're feeling this," I'll just be like, "Oh, like, you know, tell me about a time," like, and get them to start talking about something I know that they're feeling, just to get them to say, "Well, yeah, you know, this week it was really difficult." And actually, I think when I saw this photo, I think I had actually picked up that there was like longing or sadness or something, which I know wasn't, now hearing Johanna talk about it, wasn't the intent of the image, but she just said she had a really hard week. So maybe that's what I was feeling off of the image, was what
I also have COVID, and so this was like, I was like, this is the first day I was really feeling it. So it could also just be exhaustion.
Yeah, but even like, that's just not knowing her story, that's just what I got from the image. So I think that's a big part of it. Like, body language plays a big part in it. Like, my brain processes the body language, but then also the feelings and energy and all that hooey stuff. And then just like approaching it with curiosity to get them to a place where if they want to talk about it, and let me photograph while we're talking about it, then we will do that. But I put my camera down first, and then we'll talk. Did that answer the question? I don't even know.
It did.
Okay.
It did.
Excellent.
Panel judges, you picked up not only the very slight but evident distraction of the vertical horizon not being level with this image, but the distant look on the subject's face as she peered out the window. It seemed to feel less like acceptance than looking for something else. Does anyone have suggestions on how Johanna could have expressed a higher level of confidence in old and gray and A-OK? I'm going to invite Spencer to answer this one first.
Well, as someone who has a snow white beard and have been called Santa Claus, I can relate, and I love the fact that that she's comfortable with the gray hair. I have several friends I've encouraged, female friends I've encouraged to not color their hair, because it's something that you should be proud of. I mean, you've earned every one of those gray hairs. So I think to show that, I think basically she's a bit vulnerable at that window with her hands up, kind of in almost a protective, guarded position or pose, I should say. But maybe if she brought that hand down, which is quite large relative to the size of her head, brought it down and just placed it on the door frame like her other hand, and then maybe just kind of, you know, looked up a little bit more confidently, that would help to give that impression that I'm okay, I like who I am. That, you know, that would help. From a sort of a technical camera angle, I'd like to sort of see the camera move a little bit to the right, so that would then give a little bit more space between her profile and the door frame or the window frame. So she's got a bit of clear space there. And so we're not seeing quite as much window, but we're seeing more of her with a darker background.
Thank you, Spencer. Maggie or Ronald, would you like to chime in?
For this image, to me, I wasn't sure what she was trying to do. It looks like she was looking out the window at the building across. Maybe there were some birds flying over a roof or something. So I couldn't get a glimpse of her personality. You know, I couldn't tie it to the title with this image.
Thank you.
This image to me, beautifully shot. I love the natural soft lighting, and you know, you get a little bit of like a catch light in the eye. I really love that. And like the other judges, I caught it felt like there was a longing to it. And I felt like the window in this image to me played an important role in the story. So I think if you're trying to get a different message across, I think shooting this maybe away from the window might have helped kind of tell that story a little bit, in terms of, you know, the like gray hair and that kind of thing, and maybe even showcasing the gray hair just a little bit more would kind of help tell that story as well.
Thank you, Maggie. Johanna, do you have any questions for the judges this week, or anything that you'd like to talk about your image?
No, I think no, I like all the comments. There was obviously like a wall there, and so I would have loved to have been able to have a little bit more room in this space. And I appreciate all the comments on the feedback, for sure. I did, like I said, struggle with finding the energy to you know, play around with it a little bit more. I wished I had it in me at the time to have spent more time on it and play a little bit more with the angles. And also found a dress that wasn't so wrinkly, because I did have one that I really liked, but my dress was so wrinkly and I just didn't have the ability to Photoshop it all out.
And you had COVID and you were tired and
I'm gonna go to bed right after this.
yeah. You got to get better.
I'll get better.
Thank you. Next slide, please, Hope. This is Shauna. Dance like the dog is watching. Shauna, you said this week you were struggling, that you were uncertain that this process had empowered you, yet forced you to really look at yourself. Tell us what made this week a struggle, and what did you learn about yourself, and what was the hardest part for you?
Sorry, I'm already emotional. I think looking through the pictures, I kind of had a bit of an out of body experience. I guess I'm a type of person, I don't like any attention brought to myself. And I guess as I was looking at them, I just felt sadness in a way. I was, you know, I see this person and all this, you know, I've gone through some stuff, and just why don't you love yourself?
It's okay.
And why do you deny yourself joy? And like in this moment, it was a joyful moment. I was, you know, and I was having fun, and so it was just kind of and as I sat with it throughout the week more, it did become a bit more empowering. That, you know, it's okay to love yourself, and it's okay to find joy and to allow yourself to feel joy. So it ended up being a good experience once I worked through all of that. So sorry.
It's a process, and I can tell you that I'm right there with you. I attempted this week and had some camera issues, but I'm going to go back and I'm going to give it a try again. So thank you for being vulnerable and putting yourself out for this challenge, Shauna. Teri, you and Spencer both noted the presence of a mirror, yet the absence of a reflection. Other than checking for lipstick on teeth, when and why do you use a mirror, if at all? What is the significance and importance of being reflected in your own work?
That is, I'm like, I feel there should be like an RT answer to like why. I remember taking a class where they taught us about fine art paintings, and they're like, the mirror symbolizes vanity and blah. But I was like, that's such a patriarchal way of thinking of mirrors for when women are pictured with mirrors. But I love to use mirrors, number one, because then there's two of me in a photo, so that's kind of nice, double your pleasure. But also because you can use it to show two sides of the story, essentially. Like if this image had it been like a super intentional piece to it, but hearing your story now, actually, I would have liked to actually not see you in the mirror at all, because of your story of like I think there was a bit of a write-up or something about not seeing yourself or not liking seeing yourself or things like that, I think was the note. I can't remember, but either way, like either not being in it at all or being in it fully and completely. And yeah, and that I feel is something that we can use mirrors for. Is it's like we should be able to see a reflection, but there's a reason why she's hiding from it, or whatever that is. Does that make sense? So I think it just adds to a story. Similarly, also, I would say, like, same as the pictures on the wall, like, even though maybe that was an intentional part of this, I think it shows there's all these other labels that women tend to wear, and they lose who they are as a person. And so that's what I got from this story as well, is a moment of her being a woman instead of a wife, or I don't know if you have kids, a parent or whatever, but like in this moment we got to see the woman, but it was hard for her to accept the woman because it maybe has been a while since she's seen that. I don't know, but yeah, so I thought I really was moved by this image. I loved it.
Thank you, Teri. Panel judges, Shauna did not receive this week's top technical score, and she got many pointers on how to up the technical ante. But there was something whimsical about this image that captured everyone's attention. Would anybody be willing to tackle what it was about this image that really caught your eye? If you wouldn't mind, Spencer, can you please start off?
Sure. This is, first of all, I'm really glad that it's black and white, because there's so much going on in this picture that if it was color, that would be distracting. I like the fact that you've got some motion in there, but I'd like to see more of it. It looks almost like, maybe you've bumped the camera because there's not quite as much. So if it was a longer exposure and you were really blurred, that would set up a perfect opportunity to have the other part of you in the mirror completely still, really sharp, so that there's a contrast between you behind closed doors where you're really just letting it go, and then the other part of you looking through the mirror, representing the other part of you that you feel. So I think that was an opportunity. The mirror is perfectly placed, and it would have just been two photos, and you just basically mask out the mirror to let that that other still image come through. Maybe you're looking at yourself.
Thank you, Spencer. Maggie or Ronald?
So I thought this was a powerful and clever image. Clever almost to the point of a Gary Larson Far Side comic. Some of his comics are famous because they're so powerful and insightful. And I actually thought technically it was superbly well done. The black and white is even better touch. But every part of this image technically for me is really, really good. To be nitpicky, I might have photoshopped not the main subjects, but that little wall outlet to the bottom right doesn't contribute to the image. But other than that, the message behind this is what really got me, because the title is Dance Like the Dog is Watching. So I thought, okay, that's very clever, very interesting, because if you're dancing to the dog is watching, that means you have, a part of you inside that you want to bring out, but you're too, at that moment, shy or apprehensive of showing it. So you're gonna dance for the dog, and you're in your underwear, and the motion blur showing the movement. Overall, I thought it was a fantastic shot, both in terms of the emotion out of it and technically as well.
Thank you, Ronald. Maggie?
For me, this image, like you mentioned, like the je ne sais quoi element. And for me, there was just something about the rawness of it and the honesty. And that's for me what I picked up on and what I loved most about it. And what grabbed me ahead of any of the technical stuff right at the start was just the vulnerability in it. And that's why I loved it. I mean, technically, I loved all the choices in terms of like going black and white and how the dog's positioned in the kind of bottom corner of the frame. Yeah, I thought it was really, really well done.
Thank you. Shauna.
And I can add.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And I can add too, like she put a lot of elements in there that showed more about her backstory and more about her personality. Because I'm looking at her wedding photos, I'm looking at, by having those in there is telling me more about her story. I'm looking at her in her washroom there, her bathroom, and I'm looking at how big the dog is. So obviously she's had it for a while. Like there's a lot of storytelling in this one image, like, and the nice window, the texture and patterns on the drapes, like definitely. I found there is the je ne sais quoi part of it is the richness of the image.
Thank you. Shauna, do you have any questions for the judges this week or anything that you'd like to talk about your image about?
No, I think I'm good. Thanks. I appreciate all your comments, and I agree with everything you guys have said, and I appreciate everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Next slide, please, Hope. Nikki Lynn, True Colors. Nikki Lynn, this week you photographed your magic, the beautiful parts of you. This is a side of you no one sees until you show them. You choose to share this by trying your hand at double exposure. What about this challenge was most difficult for you? And did you learn anything new about yourself over the course of this process?
Yeah, I chose to do this because I kind of got stuck on the part of the video that Teri was talking about when she was like, show the magical parts of yourself, show the beautiful parts of yourself. So I thought, oh, how am I going to do that? And I wanted to show the vulnerable parts too, parts that I've never really shown. So I kind of stepped out of my box in two different ways. And one was getting naked in front of the camera, which I have never done before, or taking a self-portrait like this in any way at all. So I think the hardest part was taking those few first images and seeing them in the camera was hard, and it was an eye-opener, and it took me a while to, I guess, learn how to use the camera to make the image better than the first few that came out, because that was quite hard kind of seeing that. But I really wanted to be creative, and I wanted to try double exposure. And once I started playing with it in camera, I was addicted. Oh, it was so fun to try and fun to do. And I just wanted my whole message was kind of just that, like the vulnerable outside that people would see, not, include the nakedness, but, and then kind of the creative inside magic of your mind type of thing that you don't really show unless you choose to. I'm not really sure what I learned, if I learned anything throughout this, except for just that it was hard to see myself that way. I suppose that it would take a while for me to get to where Teri is, to be so comfortable with yourself being in front of the camera like that. So I guess I learned that I think I would have a far way to go for that.
But are you willing to explore that?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I want to hear. Teri, you love the play on words that came about as a result of a double exposure in this image, but some of the other judges felt it fell short on a technical level. When you are shooting, where is the balance for you between technical proficiency and embracing the moment, and why?
I am definitely not as technical as I probably could be, but because I always say the emotion trumps the technical part of it. Because technically you can turn anything black and white and throw some grain on and it's going to look supreme. But if the emotion is lacking in an image, it's going to look dull and flat, for me anyways. I like energy in a photo. I like expression behind the eyes. I like blur. I love blur. I love also trying different things. So when Nikki said this was her first time playing around with a double exposure, I got really excited because I think people should be willing to try things that they may not work out, and they may be really frustrating when you're trying to figure it out, but that's part of the magic that comes from exploration and discovery. And then you'll remember that you can do this thing. But I think in portraits specifically, yeah, I'm not about technical over emotion. Emotion wins every time.
Gotcha. Panel judges, the challengers were asked to show, not tell this week, and so they did not have the luxury of an artist statement, only a title. In terms of representing what it felt to be doubly exposed, what ways could Nikki Lynn could have elevated this image without having to rely on post-processing? Sorry, Ronald or Maggie, actually all three of you, we'd like to hear from you.
First question. So was this was done in camera? Question to the photographer.
Yeah, this was done totally in camera. There was no Photoshop at all. And I did a number of different images, and I realized that the Northern Lights are a bit blurry in this, but I chose to do that on purpose because it's kind of, I didn't want it to be as sharp. It's kind of my, you know, my brain or my mind or the behind the scenes, the thinking. So I kind of wanted that blur a little bit instead of the sharpness. But yeah, it was all in camera.
Maggie?
Oh, that's impressive. I mean, double exposure is not an easy thing to do. So that's, I hadn't guessed it. I thought it was kind of Photoshop done. So really great job doing that. I love the concept that you came up with. I love, I mean, your choice of like direction and the lighting was really good, and the highlights. I might have changed it just a little bit, but that's technical. It's not, it's a personal preference. I mean, for me, I loved this concept. It was really well done.
Thank you. Spencer?
I'm with Maggie in thinking that I didn't realize this was done in camera. So, wow, that's impressive. I think I read in the write-up that this was, you know, this is what you're thinking, your inspiration. So, if these Northern Lights represent what's going on in your head, I'd like to see now. Knowing that it was done in camera is more difficult, but I would have liked to have seen this treatment done coming out of your head and not down the neck and over your shoulders. So obviously that can't be done really if you're doing it in camera, but I do like the concept, the idea. I do feel like if the lighting was brought around a little bit more to the left, a little bit more straight on, you'd fill in a little bit of the light on your upper chest so that there's a bit of light. You eliminate the shadows, and we get to see a little bit more of you. I think it's a great idea, and I appreciate it even more now knowing that it was done in camera.
Thank you.
So when I saw this image, I understood what photographer is going for. She's bare, so she's not wearing anything, and she's obsessed with the aurora. So I got that she's an artist. Okay. The one thing about this, I'm totally in agreement with Spencer here. The lighting is not contributing to this image. If we show more of her, so we bring the lighting more towards camera left, not all the way around, but just show more of her. Then we can see her as a person, and we can see she's thinking of the lights. Right now, it's an abstract photo. So it's interesting as an abstract, but it's not so much a personality showing photo.
Thank you, Ronald. Nikki Lynn, do you have any questions for any of the judges this week, or anything you'd like to talk about your image?
No, not really. When I did the first image, like the picture of myself, I had a few that I did, and it was just, I used a dark backdrop, and I was just facing the window in my house to try to get that light. So there was I had a few that were different kind of angles with the shadows. So I chose this one, but I've never really thought about that shadow on my chest, I suppose, being something that I should have shown more of. When I decided to crop this picture, there was the first thought was I should show a little more, and the crop was like a little bit show. I just couldn't do it. I had like a little bit more shown with a little bit more light down there, but I just wasn't comfortable enough. So I kind of cropped a lot of it out. But no, I totally get the lighting and the shadows and even the hair. There was a couple that I had taken without the hair, and I don't know why I chose to keep it in there, but no, but I appreciate all the comments. Thanks.
Nikki, I would say that I don't think you really need to even move the light. If you just, what's that? That's your left shoulder. If you just, move your left shoulder a little bit behind you and just turned your head slightly, you would then fill those shadows with a little bit more light. And that would soften it a little bit more. I think the crop is fine. You don't need to show any more. You don't need to show any less. You just have to sort of move the head maybe just a couple of degrees to get some light on that dark side and rotate the shoulder back a little bit. And that'll soften that harsh shadow coming down, and it'll fill in and tell more about you.
Thank you. Do any of the judges wish to talk about any of the images that we've seen tonight, if they'd like to add any extra insights for the challengers?
I can make a comment about the first image.
Okay.
This image is great. Basically, all the elements showing a glamour shot, the lights, the lighting, the props. Definitely, you can get that this is a photographer who is doing high-end, beautiful work, but she's, there's something suffocating her about, about either her work or her own personal viewpoint. Very well conveyed by putting the hands around her neck. And, you get that this is glamour, luxury because she's wearing lingerie. But the elements around and the lighting and her, I thought this was a good shot. Again, to be nitpicky, just composition, the main point is her, but she's sort of placed like a little bit off a PowerPoint. But other than that, yeah, I thought it was good.
Thank you, Ronald.
Yeah, I made the same observation as Ronald did. It's a lovely shot. We instantly see her face, and then her hair is like a leading line. It just takes us right down to the curve of her back. It's well done. I'd like to move her so that she's centered between the lights, and also open up. I didn't really get the fact that she's got her hands around her neck, but more just in a protective, covering up position. But just open it up a little bit so we see a little bit more of her rather than all these arms coming together. So we open up the chest a little bit, but we'd still get the idea that she's still covering if it was just opened up a little bit more.
Thank you. Does anybody want to talk about any of the other images?
Can you show the grid of them again? Yeah, the one with the looking out the window again, the one on the right.
Next one.
Yeah, I really like this picture. I love her face and just how she's looking at, we don't know what she's looking at. And that's one of the really compelling things about this picture. I just find that, again, it's just millimeters to move the camera just to clear her nose and her cheek away from that little bit of door frame there, and lowering the hand. I didn't get the fact that her dress was wrinkled at all. I barely even saw the dress because I'm so fixated on her lovely face and how it's got lots of color, and everything else, barring the dress, is basically black and white. So just a slight camera movement to the right. eliminate a little bit more of that. Well, basically, it's almost a third of the right-hand side of the frame. That would eliminate some of that and put more emphasis on her face, which would also put more emphasis on the gray.
Thank you, Spencer.
I wanted to say good job to everyone, because getting in front of the camera, especially if it was your first time, is not an easy thing. And the fact that you did it means you're all winners.
I agree with Terry. Good job, challengers, this week.
Keep doing it.
Yes, keep doing it. Okay, before we get into the results, Hope and I wanted to let you all know that the next challenge is an important one, the ripple effect. This challenge was designed to start a conversation, to dig a little deeper into an important social issue that is very relevant in Canada today. We not only wish that all 12 challengers of season 2 will participate, but we hope fans and mentors will start the conversation and perhaps shoot the brief as well.
Hello, challengers. Welcome to week 8. My name is Jessica Vandenberg. I am born from the Deneta First Nation and am what is termed a 60 scoop survivor. And I'm so honored to be the judge for one of the panel judges for this week. For me, truth and reconciliation is very personal. My birth family are residential school survivors. I'm what's called a 60 scoop survivor through the foster adoption system. Canada has a very interesting history with its Indigenous peoples and present as well. A lot of oppressiveness has been built into our systems. There was intention by past country leaders around killing the Indian and the child. It's led to a lot of socioeconomic issues. It's led to a lot of trauma, a lot of need for healing amongst our Indigenous peoples and communities, and a need for all Canadians to understand this history. This brief for me is very important to see how everyone can see themselves in the calls to action, whether they are at the stage of just simply learning, coming to awareness, coming to understanding of what's going on, or if they're at the point of being able to create safe and ethical places for conversations, for compassion, for empathy, or even at the point of activism. And for me, it is so important that everyone understands that there is a path to reconciliation. Reconciliation to me is more than just actions. It's how we feel as Indigenous people when walking with allies and with other Canadians. If people are acting as bridges, if they can see the path to true reciprocity, there's a feeling of being seen, of being authentic. For us as Indigenous people, we really align with following natural law. And so connection is so important. Connection on a people-to-people level, on a heart-to-heart level, on a spirit-to-spirit level with all of our relations. And so this week's brief is very much about you and how you connect. And we're looking for a chance for you to really showcase your creativity and how bridges can be built for finding a way to reconciliation, how you connect. And I'm so excited to see what you all come up with. You need to submit your piece for this week by Sunday, February 27th at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And I just am so excited. So looking forward to your submission and happy shooting. Thanks so much.
This week, we will show the top 2 and the bottom 2. The person in third place is obviously safe this week. So we'll first announce that. Our third place and safe challenger this week is Martha. Martha, you are safe this week. Can't wait to see what you produce next week. Our bottom 2 this week are Johanna and Nikki Lynn. Every week, this gets harder and harder. Hope and I hate it. We hate saying goodbye to people. Nikki Lynn, this week, you are safe. Johanna, I'm sorry, but your time with the shooting range has ended. You produced some amazing shots during the competition, and we hope that you had fun and that you were able to connect with some great people this season. Hope and I know you will do amazing things in your photography, and we can't wait to see more from you. Is there anything that you'd like to say?
I just want to say that I am just honored to even have been a part of this. I never in a million years thought I'd make it this far. So it's, yeah, I'm just so honored to be, working alongside all of these amazing photographers and the mentorship and all of it. So thank you. Thank you to everybody and the admins for all your hard work, the judges.
Thank you, Johanna. Judges, do you have any parting advice for her?
Just keep shooting. Really good, solid work. Just comes down to the details.
Yeah. All right. Let's see which shooter exposed themselves this week. Our top two this week are Shauna and Stacy. In second place this week is Stacy. That means Shauna, you are this week's winner and sharpshooter. Congratulations. Wonderful image this week. Shauna, would you like to say anything about your win this week?
Sorry, I'm still a mess over here. I don't know what's going on. I just thank you so much. It means a lot to me, and it's really been a great week, and I've learned a lot about myself, and it's an experience I'll keep with me forever and moving forward as well. So thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Teri, would you like to tell Shauna what she won this week?
Do I know what she won?
Oh.
I don't know what she won.
Hope?
Do I?
A copy of your book.
Oh, that was for this week. Okay, yeah, you get a copy of my book. Good. Sorry, I don't even have one near me to show you, son of a bee. But my book, The Geode Theory, Chipping Away at Body Image. So you will get a copy of that. So just, I guess, contact me for your mailing address, and I'll just ship it from here because I'll sign it and get it on the way to you, so you can have that and dig into it. It's a fast read, just an FYI.
And write a personal apology for forgetting that that's what the gift was this week.
Well, I remember that, like asking for it. It was like, I assumed it was for this week, but I was like, is that what they're asking me to talk about right now? That moment. So yeah.
So what you're saying is that we should have clarified with you that before we started taping.
Yeah,
gotcha.
But it's fine.
We'll remember that for next year.
Don't worry about it. It'll be great. I'll throw in a keychain to make it better. It'll be fun.
Free swag, sweet.
Yeah.
Okay, so, well, folks, that's it. That's all for tonight. We will see you back here next time, same time next week for The Ripple Effect. Good night, everybody. Can't wait to see you next week.
Bye.